They used to call me Crazy Joe, but now they can call me Batman.
Good morning. Welcome back to Crazy Joe's Concession Stand. I'm Crazy Joe, and I want to talk about a movie that is very important that we discuss because it is not being discussed properly. It is not being discussed in the proper context. And that movie is Madam Web. Madam Web is playing in theaters right now. It's not doing so hot in theaters, and that's okay. Movies come out, some do well, some don't do well. Some people like a movie, some people don't like a movie. That's all right. That's not the problem with Madam Web. The problem with Madam Web is the reception this film has received before it ever opened. Madam Web has become a punching bag for the internet. The internet is filled with negative reviews of Madam Web. But more importantly, and far worse, before this movie ever opened in theaters, people were rooting against it. People were angry about it. People were, they wrote this movie off before they even knew what it was. Now it's opened, it's in theaters, it's playing now. If you don't like it, if you go see the movie, you don't like it, that's perfectly valid. That's an opinion. And once you've seen the movie and once you've been able to judge the movie for its merits or its faults, then your opinion on the movie is perfectly valid. Love it, hate it, that's your opinion. And no one can take it from you. But the toxicity towards Madam Web before it ever opened is quite frankly disgusting. And it's bad for cinema. And it's bad for the superhero and comic book genre. It's very bad. I'm on MME often, Movie Madness Entertainment. And a lot of people on our MME panel were beating up on Madam Web before it ever opened. And some of the comment arguments were, how could you do a Spider-Man movie without Spider-Man in it? Well, Venom did. Venom was quite successful. People liked Venom. My daughter has never picked up a Venom comic in her life. She's a Venom fan now because of that movie. She loved that movie. Venom is a big franchise. Two movies. Both of them were hits. Both of them were fairly well received. Critics didn't really like them, but they went over big with the audience. So, yeah, that's proof. You don't need Spider-Man. What's more, we don't want Spider-Man. And if you think you want Spider-Man, you're wrong. You don't want Spider-Man. There's 8 Spider-Man movies. I think. I didn't count them. There's like 8 Spider-Man movies. Maybe more. When you make a movie and you put a title on that movie, and the title character is Venom, the title character is Morbius, the title character is Madam Web, then you need to sell that movie on the merits of your lead character. If your movie is only going to sell because it had a cameo from Spider-Man, then your movie wasn't good. Now you may argue, but Joe, Madam Web wasn't good. Look at the reviews. Morbius wasn't good. Look at the reviews. Well, that doesn't change the fact that people were hating on the movie before it came out. Because before the movie came out, you didn't know what the reviews were going to be. You didn't know it was going to get negative reviews. You didn't know. You may have assumed, but you didn't know. So the whole, but it got negative reviews, doesn't hold water. That argument doesn't hold water. Because if you're pre-hating something, you've decided before you walked into the theater that you don't like this thing. You don't know what that thing is. And the idea that you hate it because Spider-Man isn't in it, the movie's not called Spider-Man. You could put a cameo from Spider-Man in there, but if that is to make it or break it for your film is inherently flawed. And maybe Morbius didn't work. Maybe Madam Web didn't work, but Venom did work twice. And that's proof you don't need Spider-Man in a movie based on a Spider-Man character. Just as you don't need Batman in a movie based on a Batman character. Joker made $1 billion. Another problem with Madam Web is that it's a film that took big swings, tried different things. Really tried different things. It is not your typical superhero comic book movie. Not by a long shot. It's a very different film. I would even go as far as to say it's not a superhero film. It's superhero adjacent. 3 of the characters in this movie are going to be superheroes someday. That's the premise of your movie. It's very, very Terminator. These 3 characters are going to be superheroes someday, and our villain wants to bump them off before that happens. So these characters are not yet superheroes. And that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool because we get a lot of superhero movies, and this is one that's really doing something different. You know, whether it succeeds or fails, you really should tip your hat to the fact that they're trying something different. One of my favorite movies of 2023 was Shazam! Fury of the Gods. Loved Shazam! Fury of the Gods. Saw it, I think, 4 times in the theater, maybe 5. I'd have to check my records. But I really love that movie. Did a whole filming locations video on the Crazy Joe Adventures channel. Check it out. Went to all the filming locations of Shazam! Fury of the Gods. Love that movie. One of the most bullshit pieces of criticism I heard about that movie. I heard people say, oh, it's generic. It's generic. And honestly, every time I heard the word generic, I wanted to pull what's left of my hair out and smack somebody upside the head. Because generic, it says nothing. It says nothing. It's a buzzword, but it tells you nothing. And if you ask someone, what didn't you like about Shazam! Fury of the Gods? If all they can say is it's generic, that tells me they really don't have anything negative to say about it. But they want to say something negative about it. So they're pulling out a generic buzzword. Because generic basically means it's just like everything else. Okay. The superhero movie. I don't give a shit if it's like everything else. All I care about is it good? Is it good or is it bad? I don't need every superhero movie to break new ground. Just like I don't need every comic book to break new ground. When I used to go to the comic book store on Fridays and pick up my pile of books, I didn't pick up every book going, does this do something that really breaks the genre? Didn't care if it broke the genre, if it broke the genre wide open and did something different. I just wanted it to be good. And Shazam 2 was very good. So the fact that it didn't redefine superhero movies, I didn't need it to. I just needed it to be good. And it was. But the reason I bring up Shazam 2 is because the criticism of Shazam 2 being generic was so bullshit. And that is clearly demonstrated in the reception of Madam Web. Because if the audience is out there saying, we want something different, we want something radically different, this is just more of the same, then suddenly you get a movie like Madam Web, which is anything but generic, which is completely unique, completely different. A superhero adjacent film that barely has any superheroes in it. A movie where the main characters are going to be superheroes someday, but they're not superheroes yet. A superpowered villain versus 3 mortals who don't have any real superpowers, except one of them can see the future and knows where he's going to be beforehand. That's different. That's different. That's unique. That's something we haven't seen before. But we get that. They give us that. And people are so ready to swat it away and go, what is this? What is this? Do you know they don't even turn into Spider-Women in the movie? That trailer was misleading. No, it wasn't. The trailer wasn't misleading. That trailer did not indicate that this was a movie about Spider-Women. That trailer showed you flashes of the Spider-Woman. It's the same as it is in the movie. The movie showed you flashes. The trailer showed you flashes. That movie wasn't selling this. The trailer wasn't selling this as a Spider-Man movie or a Spider-Person movie. It's not what it was doing. And I've heard some people say the trailer was misleading. No, it wasn't. No, it wasn't. That trailer let you know what this movie was. This is a movie about Madam Web, and the girls are on the peripheral. They're not the main focus. Trailer doesn't make you think they are, and they're not. And that's not what this movie was supposed to be. And when people tell me that's what they want, it tells me they wanted a typical superhero movie like every other. Not that there's anything wrong with that. That's fine. But if that's what you want, then it's disingenuous when you come after something like Shazam and say it's generic. Because generic is apparently exactly what you want. Because as soon as someone tries to break the form, you're ready to come at them with knives. There seems to be a great animosity towards Sony as a studio just because they're making Spider-Man movies that don't have Spider-Man in them. Why? Why? Sony is a for-profit business, as is Disney, as is Warner Brothers, as are all these studios. If you love any movie that comes out of Disney, if you love any movie that comes out of Warner Brothers, if you love any movie that comes out of Paramount, you like movies that are made for profit by a corporation. You know, people need to get paid. Working stiffs, people with a wife, people with kids. We're not talking like movie stars making $1 million salaries. We're talking about the best boy. We're talking about the gaffer. These guys need to work. And a studio isn't going to make a movie that they don't think is going to make a profit. So when they have a property like Spider-Man, and they're like, how can we use this? There's nothing wrong with that. That's not a bad thing. In fact, I keep saying Sony is the most important studio making superhero movies right now because they're the wild card. They're the underdog. All the cards are stacked in the favor of Marvel and DC. They've got all the main characters: Captain America, the Hulk, Deadpool, Wolverine, Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman. Warner and Disney are controlling those guys. Sony is the underdog. They've got these second stringers like Venom and like Morbius and like Kraven the Hunter. And they're trying to do what they can with those movies. And they're trying to make them interesting. They may not always succeed. And make no mistake about it, I've seen Madam Web twice. I like Madam Web. Madam Web's an interesting movie. Madam Web is a really interesting film. And I appreciate it. But it's not a great film. It's not a great film. It's got really bad dialogue. The actor playing the villain, he's not impressive, which is weird because he's apparently won some awards like BAFTAs, but I don't think he's very good. Maybe he's better in other movies. He's not great in this. So, I mean, this movie is not perfect, but it's such an admirable film. You watch this film and you just see people trying to do something really different and make it work. And it's got a bit of time travel in there. It's a little timey-wimey. Not that anyone's actually traveling through time, but we have foreknowledge of future events dictating the plot. I'm a Back to the Future guy. I'm a Doctor Who fan. This is my wheelhouse. This is the kind of thing I love. Madam Web tells a great story. It tells a great story. It's not well told. You can have a great story and not tell it well. You can do that. And that's what this movie does. This movie's got a great story. It's just not told well. The dialogue is bad. Some of the acting is bad. There's some creative choices that make you go, what were they thinking there? But overall, this is a movie that had a lot of effort put into it by a first-time director. And it's a likable film. I heard someone call it, well, a lot of people are calling it trash. Those people are wrong. Well, opinions are subjective. But the question is, why are you calling it trash? Are you calling it trash because Spider-Man isn't there? Did you not see it? Did you not see it, but someone told you it wasn't good? Because I'm going to tell you right now, your opinion is invalid. If you haven't watched the thing, but you're trashing it, your opinion is invalid. You need to see a thing to have an opinion on the thing. Take me in Dune 2. I got no interest in Dune 2. I'm not going to see Dune 2. Why? Didn't like Dune 1. Didn't like the 1984 Dune. Didn't like the Dune novel. Anything Dune I have seen, didn't care for. So I have given Dune multiple times at bat. I tried to read the book, watched the 84 movie, watched the part 1 of the current iteration, and found Dune wasn't for me. So I'm not going to see Dune 2 because I have decided I don't like Dune. Dune isn't for me. But I'm not going to sit here and tell you Dune 2 is a bad movie. Because if I sat here and told you Dune 2 was a bad movie, that would be incredibly disingenuous because I didn't see Dune 2. I don't have an interest in Dune 2, but I'm not going to sit here and trash it because I didn't see it. And it's not my right to trash a film I didn't see. I just don't want to see it because I did see part 1. Part 1 was pretty boring. I can trash part 1. I saw part 1. But I'm not going to trash part 2 because I didn't see it. So if you're sitting out there going, Madam Web's trash, Madam Web's trash, but you didn't buy a ticket to Madam Web, your opinion's worthless. But Sony, as I was saying, is the wild card. And you need a wild card. Fox, 20th Century Studios, was purchased by Disney. They're owned by Disney now. So they're no more. The 20th Century Studios and their X-Men movies was a wild card. They made movies like Deadpool. They made movies like Logan. These were R-rated superhero films. These were R-rated superhero films featuring mainstream Marvel characters that Disney never would have made. Disney would never have made either of these movies. Now you're going to get Deadpool 3, and it's rated R. But that's only because the Fox movies paved the way. The Fox movies set the standard. They made these movies rated R. They were successful. And now Disney acquired the rights, and they're just going to follow suit. But they wouldn't have blazed that trail. You needed the wild card to blaze that trail. You needed the wild card to come in and go, we're going to be the ones to do something different. And that was Fox. And Fox got bought out. And if you just have Marvel and DC going at each other, you're just going to have two mainstream studios not trying to push the boundaries. Not that you always have to push the boundaries. Like I said, Shazam 2 didn't push any boundaries, but it was excellent. You don't have to push boundaries. But it's cool when someone is. It keeps everyone on their toes, and it makes the whole genre better. Now, Madam Web may not be that movie, but if you condemn Sony for taking chances, do you know what will happen? They will stop taking chances, and then nobody is going to push the boundaries. Because we got Craven coming out. That's rated R. Sony right now is the studio taking big swings, and they're not always going to hit. Because that's what happens when you take a risk. When you take a risk, it doesn't always hit. But if you trash them for taking the risk, that's bad for cinema, and it's bad for the genre. And this needed to be said because there's too many videos on the internet just tearing down Madam Web. And it's not a great movie, but it's a pretty interesting movie. And it's a movie worth watching. I've watched it twice. It's not going to make my top 10 of the year. Unless it's a really slow year. I don't know. It's early. Who knows? Maybe it'll be a really slow year. I don't know. But I don't foresee it making my top 10 of the year. But I got enjoyment out of it. It's flawed, but it's interesting. And if you go into it with an open mind, and if you look at it and you say, hey, this is wild. These guys tried something different. These guys tried to make a superhero movie where the superheroes are adjacent. This movie, the focus is on something else. That's admirable. And God bless Sony for taking a big swing and trying something different. I'm from Philadelphia. You know who our hero is here in Philadelphia? Rocky. Rocky. His whole life was 1,000,000-to-1 shot. Rocky was the underdog, and we rooted for Rocky. And I'm rooting for Sony. I think Sony is doing important work right now. They have the rights to superhero characters that are not the obvious choices. And therefore, they need to try something different. And they are trying something different. Maybe it'll work. Sometimes it will work. Venom worked. Sometimes it won't work. Morbius didn't work. Madam Web, I'd say that falls somewhere in the middle. I'd say it's the most interesting of all of them. It's the most interesting choice. And it's the most interesting story that they've chosen to tell. Clearly, the box office wasn't there for it. But I don't know that that's important, because it doesn't look like it was an expensive movie to make. I don't think they spent too much on it. It's going to do well on streaming. It will. It will do really well on streaming. Because we know for a fact that movies that have a theatrical release always do better on streaming than movies that don't get a theatrical release. So just the fact that you got a theatrical release gives your release prestige. And this is going to go to, I think the Sony route is it goes to Stars first. If I'm not mistaken, I think it goes Stars. Then after Stars, it goes to Netflix. Then after Netflix, it'll end up on Disney Plus. That's the Sony plan. And people will press play and watch this. People who didn't go see it in the theater will press play and watch this. And I think 10 years down the line, when we look back at this era of films, we're going to look at Madam Web. And we may not remember it as a classic. We may not remember it as a great movie. We may not even remember it as a good movie. But I think we're going to point to it and say, that was an interesting film. That was an interesting attempt. Remember the movie Lady in the Water? M. Night Shyamalan movie? Horrible movie. I didn't like that movie. I didn't like that movie at all. Not even a little bit. But I admire that movie. Because at a time when people were saying, there's no original ideas. Hollywood's out of original ideas. M. Night Shyamalan stepped up to the plate and he gave us something wholly original. It wasn't good, but it was original. And that's why I always called Lady in the Water, and I still do, a noble failure. It was a noble failure. It was a failure, but it was trying to do something different. And for that, I tip my hat to it. And we should all tip our hat to people trying to do something different. That's all I have to say. If you haven't seen Madam Web, go check it out. What do you got to lose? What's the worst thing that's going to happen? You don't like the movie? Big deal. Don't buy the Blu-ray. Don't watch it again. But it's worth seeing because it's interesting. Keep wearing those pajamas.
Keep wearing those pajamas
with the plastic feet.
Keep wearing those pajamas.
Tell everyone you meet.
Keep wearing those pajamas
With the back door flap.
Keep wearing those pajamas.
Don't open it, a trap.
Oh no,
It's a trap. Some people call them bitches. Some people call them jammies. They can come embroidered with big money and no whammies. They can have 100 tiny commander Adamas. But no matter how they look, just keep on wearing those pajamas.
keep on wearing those pajamas. Keep wearing those pajamas.
I know we're having fun.
Keep wearing those pajamas.
And now the song is done.